Good morning.
They're flying, some are flying down, some are flying up. It's also taking well.
Good morning, Scott.
Good morning.
Morning.
Everyone. How you
Morning.
Good
doing?
morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Right, we'll just wait a couple of minutes while everyone joins us, and then we'll get straight into things.
Good morning, everybody.
Good
Good
morning.
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 Okay, we just got a few more people to join, so we'll wait, and then I will actually just mute you guys so we can work through this.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It is.
Okay, guys, fantastic. I'm just trying to mute you all, and I can still hear some feedback from somebody. So if you wouldn't mind just muting yourselves for the moment, and then if we need to speak with you, then we'll unmute you at that point.
Sure.
So if you could just do that now, that'd be great. I am clicking the button here, but for some reason it just isn't working. I don't know why. I updated my computer not long ago, and for some reason, Zoom is now a little bit dodgy. Anyway, let's get into things. Well, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's the weekend and you've got loads going on before Christmas, so I really appreciate that. We've got a good session for you today where we're going to go through a few breakthroughs that you might have had in these last couple of weeks in the course. For me, these are my favorite couple of weeks, really where most of the magic happens in terms of the lap time coming, especially if you get it all perfectly nailed. Then we're going to analyze, as we did in week 2's seminar, analyze some students' laps that they've sent in. So thank you for the brave drivers who have sent their laps in for analysis, and we're going to do that live. I don't watch the laps beforehand, so we're all going to watch it together, give some initial feedback together to make it interactive, and then I'm going to run through the laps in detail and go through how we're thinking about how to improve with each driver. So it'll be a live interactive session there. So first of all, I always like to start these seminars by talking through the last couple of weeks, especially any breakthrough moments or challenges that you might have had during the last training programs. So as it's been about trail braking and grip manipulation and balancing your car and adjusting your technique, if you just want to mention in the chat if you've got any feedback, any breakthrough moments that you've had, and we can discuss it. And when we discuss these things, as with the student analysis, I will talk in more general terms. Yes, it will be based upon what we're talking about and what the driver is doing, but I'll try to explain it in a way that we can apply it to all of our driving, so we all learn a little bit from the seminar. So with these breakthrough moments, it's any breakthroughs that you've had with your trail braking, in understanding how you adapt your driving style, your technique for more speed, how you've learned how to change the balance of the car, moving the grip around and understanding how much more grip is available, and how that then relates to lap time, consistency. And as I mentioned at the start, we can also talk about any challenges that you may have had and how we can try and get through those. So we have Heinrich in the chat here, started things off. Heinrich, if I can just unmute you. Oh, they're all coming through thick and fast now.
I just did it. Thank you, Scott.
There you go. Fantastic, mate.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm fine. It was an excellent lesson. I had a really breakthrough moment with the vision. That was fantastic. And what helped me a lot was the piece about placing the car and realizing how wide the car is and everything. That gave me half a second. That was really crazy. Just to position the car on the really on the outside of the track and knowing where the outside is. That was a big revelation for me. Thank you very much. And but I really struggled with the whole part about the grip manipulation, bringing the car to the apex with a slight oversteer. In the on the oval, you showed it on the oval.
Yeah.
I have understeer, and I don't know why. I try to lift the throttle very hard, and it understeers. um, I try to be smooth, and it's okay, but it doesn't. I'm not able to provoke oversteer. So
Okay.
I think I need a private lesson with you.
Yeah, well, of course we can do that as well. But I think so. Firstly, great that you've made some big improvements there. It's what's always interesting is that you can do something very simple like using a little bit more track, using a little bit more road, and it then translates into half a second, as you mentioned, and that's quite
Yes.
it's a quick win. It's an easy thing,
Yes.
but until you've kind of been told and shown how to do that, it's kind of hidden. So I always like having these kind of that's
great.
a step up, and now you can apply it to all your driving. That's great. With the grip manipulation and changing the balance of the car, this is a difficult thing to do. It's a very tricky thing to do. And I mean, first of all, we need to make sure that the platform of the car is reacting in that kind of smooth way, that we're not being actually too aggressive with the car. So what I would suggest is in the lifting exercise, if the lift isn't enough, then maybe just try getting on the brake very, very gently.
Okay.
There's a moment where we talk about the weight moving forward, the load moving forward, and then it gives the front some more grip. But there is a point where you're actually asking the front of the car to do too much work, and then it understeers anyway. So if you think about the grip circle, and you're slowing the car down on the entry, and then trying to turn as well with too much deceleration and too much turning, the front tires will just give up and not have enough grip to turn. And so you may be thinking, oh, I'm transferring all the mass to the front of the car, which is happening, but then it's just too much load for the tires to do. So you may need to just have a think about that. But like you say, if you do book in a session with one of the coaches and specifically mention working on that will be a big revelation for you if you manage to get that right. But it is a tricky thing to get right, especially if there's something else underneath it that isn't quite right, and that could be triggering this understeer.
I have one last question about this. Normally in my race car, when the understeer stops, I really feel it in the steering wheel, like a short, like when it when it stops, there's a short impulse going through the car.
Yes.
And can I expect this in the sim too? Because I see that the car stops understeering. I see it, concerning my line and how the car drives, but I don't feel it in the steering wheel that the understeer stops. Does it? Is it maybe do I have something wrong in the equipment, or is iRacing not giving this output?
I think so. What you're talking about there is when you have some understeer going in, and then when it finally grips again, you feel the extra load through the wheel, and you feel it in your body in a real world car,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I mean, for me, and look, granted, I haven't tried all the different steering wheels on the market, but with my wheel, which is a Fanatec DD2, I can feel if it's got understeer, I feel it lighter, and it's quite sensitive. So it could be a setting thing, but it's I feel the steering wheel go lighter with understeer, and then I do feel it load up a little bit more when it grips. And using that information plus the audio and my vision in terms of I can feel that the car's just turning a little bit better. I know that the understeer stopped, but that could be a bit of a setting in your steering wheel that you might need to improve. Again, the coaches are the specialists with setting the wheels up. In all honesty, they've set my wheel up for me. So it would be better to speak to those guys than me. Because obviously in a real world car, you jump in and the feeling is the feeling. But we can, with the sim, obviously we can amplify certain aspects of the feeling that we have through the steering wheel. And so I think, you might want to, I'm not sure if we've got an article on the website. If not, we are putting some content like that together that shows, actually, you know what, if you go on, there's a website called simracingcockpit.com, which is from a friend of mine who's actually taking the course this cohort. He has a very good article on his website which explains the different settings that you can change and how that relates to a real world car. He raced in the real world and is now he's more in this sim. So that's probably what you're looking for.
Okay. Yeah. That's very nice.
Take a look at simracingcockpit.com.
Thank you very much for everything, Scott. It's a great experience.
Fantastic. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Okay. Andreas, if we can come to you very quickly.
Yes, Scott. Hi. Good morning, everyone.
Ready to go. Good morning. How you doing?
Great experience as well. Huge improvements over the last 2 weeks, to be honest. And especially on the hard stopping zones with trail braking. But I was struggling a lot with understeer, and now I understand why. At the exit, I had a lot of understeer. So if you don't rotate the car enough and you have the right line, then you go on the accelerator pedal and you have the understeer at the exit of the corner. So now I know what I'm doing wrong when I have that. What I'm struggling, Scott, actually is the consistency. So I have brilliance in several parts of the lap and sectors, but putting everything together like in a perfect lap is still quite tough, and it happens rather occasionally. Not nailing down and get this optimum lap done. So consistency is there, but putting everything together is really tough.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, I completely agree with you. It is difficult to piece it together. You've learned a lot, hopefully, in the last weeks, and it takes time for these things to all come together and kind of become subconscious, so that you don't really have to think about them and get that fluidity there. What I would suggest is, like with everything, the kind of philosophy of the training that we do, is give yourself, if you want to piece a lap together and have a number of laps, begin on a short circuit that's pretty simple in a relatively slow car, so that you can get more repetition, more fewer corners that you've got to kind of consciously think about, and then you can build the consistency muscle there. So I don't know, jump in the MX-5 at Brands Hatch Indy, and while it might be not the most interesting circuit, although it's quite good, you will give yourself an easier job to piece 5 fast laps together all in one go, and look at it as a training session, not going out there for a race or too much fun, but just to get this consistency across a lap. Always look at something. If you're struggling with something, look at the easiest way that you can do it, practice there, and then open things up to more complex technical circuits.
Okay, that's a good piece of advice. Also, one question, Scott, what would be a next step following this course? If we find the consistency and then we are at sorting out the basics, that was great from this course. Is this a next step for another masterclass, or is just the Sim Racing Academy that you have in place?
Yeah, so I mean, the way that you look at driving in terms of the improvement is you kind of make these step changes as you go along, and then different things become kind of surface, different issues surface to the top. For the moment, we do only have the Sim Racing Academy, which we have all different types of sessions on there. And they're really good, but we don't have another course at the moment that's similar to this one. But I'm sure you've seen the value in the coaching side of this, and the Sim Racing Academy is an extension of that.
Okay, great, brilliant.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Great,
Keep it
you.
up. Great stuff.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so we'll have one more breakthrough. I see we've got loads here. That's absolutely brilliant. But we need to move into actually doing some analysis. So we'll have one more from Andrew Soper. If you want to unmute yourself, Andrew, or I'll try and find you. Here we go.
Hi there. How you doing?
Hi, Andrew. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
So your brake, you've mentioned here that your lap times have come down and you're not standing on the brakes anymore.
Yeah, I find not having sort of hard braking, actually being smoother, lifting off and trailing into the corner. I've seen a dramatic improvement in the lap times coming down, and the whole thing just feels less ragged, whereas before you kind of felt like you were holding on to it. Now it actually feels like you're in control of it. Understanding how the mass is moving around and how important that is relative to the sim and the loading on the tyres and how that's changing dynamically has made I've just seen the lap times come down like by huge chunks by just being smoother and less aggressive with the brakes. And I think the problem is, and I think you highlighted this in the last session, is on the circuit in real life racing, I was always taught, brake in a straight line, then do your steering, because that is a very safe approach for the instructor that's hanging on for grim life in the seat next to you, and to change that sort of ingrained behavior of getting all your braking done in a straight line and then turning and actually, being less aggressive with the brakes and manipulating the car basically through the corner has made a huge difference.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear that. A couple of points there. It's probably the most common problem is the fluidity or the lack of fluidity that some drivers have. So it sounds like you're racing in the real world as well, and honestly, it's the same from the real world to the sim, where drivers will overslow the car, get on the throttle too early, and the weight's moving around very sharply, and they're dropping grip out the car, and it just feels like there's so much going on in the car. There's no fluidity there. We're making the car work too hard, and so as you say, that comes down to a number of things, and it's difficult if you've been taught from the beginning to brake in a straight line and then get off the brakes and turn and separate these inputs. It's difficult to unlearn that, but yeah, with practice you can do that. And if you look at it in the new way, and then all of a sudden, which is fantastic, the car feels like it's a different car. It's easier to drive. Rather than reacting to it when it slides, you're actually predicting when it's going to slide, which is when the real speed comes. So that's absolutely brilliant. Really glad to hear that, Andrew.
Yeah, I must admit, the difference is I hated the MX-5, absolutely loathed it when I first started. Last week, I absolutely loved it. I just thought this car's great. It's like the transformation is significant.
We have the same thing in our real world training programs, on our on-track training programs. We use MX-5s as well, Mark 3s. And drivers come along and they're like, a Mazda. But actually, when they leave, because they feel like they're in control on the limit and they're on top of the car, they absolutely love them by the time they leave. So, they're a great training car.
Yep. Cool.
Brilliant. Okay, guys. So we are going to get into doing some live analysis. I don't know how many laps we're going to get through. Hopefully we'll get through a couple of drivers. First of all, I wanted to say thank you very much for the drivers who have been brave and sent in their laps. I know Mike sent the email out a couple of days ago, so that's absolutely brilliant. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just call out the laps that we've been sent through in the order that they got sent to us. So whoever sent it first, if you're in this group, because we have another group session tomorrow with the other half of the group. So just call out your name if I do have your lap, and then we'll start with yours. I want to analyze somebody's lap who is in the group at the moment, and then the same thing tomorrow. And then what we're going to do is I'll send you the YouTube link. Watch it on YouTube if you can. If not, I'll share my screen here and we'll watch it here. But just bear in mind that the frame rate isn't great when you're watching it through Zoom. We're going to watch the lap together. I'm going to make some notes as well. And then I'm going to go through it in detail. So just remember that when we're watching it the first time through, we're looking for racing lines. We're looking for making sure that the driver's using all the circuit, that they're on the right line, that they're not making mistakes. You know, if they are making mistakes, we want to make a note of them, but we don't want to think about their technique when they make a mistake. You know, the advice if you're making mistakes is just to calm things down, make sure you're looking in the right areas. But in terms of more technical understanding of their technique, we need to look at corners where they're actually driving the car properly and not missing the apex by a few meters. We want to check the fluidity in the car. Is the car, as we've just spoken about actually, is the car working too hard, or is it fluid through the corner? When you have that fluidity through the corner, then that's when you can actually really think about manipulating the balance between the front and the rear of the car. If the car's working too hard, there's too much action going on, and the inputs are too sharp and too aggressive. And so that means that it's difficult to see what the balance of the car is doing because the weight's shifting very quickly. We need that fluidity first, even if it's a little bit below the limit. We need that fluidity to then really assess how we can change our technique. So we're going to look for that as well. Is the driver trying too hard? Some very basic advice there. Is there, at the kind of deep level, is there a balance issue? Is this driver got understeer or oversteer? And if they do, at which point of the corner do they have the understeer or the oversteer? Is it on the entry? Is it on the apex? Is it because they're getting on the throttle too hard? Is it because they're trail braking in too deep? Why is that happening? And beyond that, if you kind of got capacity to think about this, are there any patterns? And the patterns can be in the slow corners, in the fast corners, on the corner entry with trail braking, on the corner exit with getting on the throttle too early or too late, and again on the turn in with the steering. So we've got these patterns that are either by corner type, fast or slow, or by corner phase, entry, apex, exit. And when we look at those things, then you can start to group them together, any issues together, and give a principles of fundamental improvement to that driver. Because if we're just looking at a single corner, you know, if you copy someone's lap and you say, oh, brake a little bit later, turn in here. First of all, it isn't coming directly from you as the driver. You're just copying somebody and you're not feeling it. And secondly, it's just in that one corner. Whereas if we make a tweak, and it only needs to be, you know, a tiny little improvement on a fundamental, then you get massive wins in terms of lap time. And that's really what we're looking to do. So let me just stop sharing my screen and sorry, continue, and call out, oh shit, some people in the waiting room, sorry. Sorry, 2 seconds. I'm just, no, everyone's here, cool. Right, I'm gonna call out some names, and if you are here, then we will use that lap. So the first lap that I have is from Amrik Sachdev. I think I saw you in the chat actually. Amrik, let me just search for you. Yes, you are. That's you. Fantastic. All right, we'll go over your lap then. So let me just copy the YouTube link. So we're in a Porsche Cup at Alton Park, which is great. I absolutely love it, Alton. It's going to be fun to analyse. If you've got a piece of paper there, probably should have mentioned this before, but just try and note down a couple of points that you would give Amrik based upon the kind of first level of analysis that we need to do. Racing line, fluidity in the car, any mistakes. Then we'll have a quick chat and then I'll go through in detail. So I will send the link in the chat. I will then share my screen so that we can actually all watch it together. But if you want to watch it now on YouTube. Otherwise, I'm just gonna play it as well. Share screen. Okay, so we'll just watch it once through because it's quite a long lap at Alton. Into turn one. Nice apex there, using all the road on the way out. Down to Cascades. Possibly getting there a little bit earlier because there's some camber in the road, but the car's looking fluid. The line's looking pretty good. Nice trail braking there. Maybe knocked a little bit too much speed out of it. Decent exit, little bit of wheel spin on the way out. Compromised a bit on the line on the braking there on the way in. I'm going to have the platform of the car a little bit less. Down to, I think it's Nickelbrook. So as I'm going through here, you know, we can say that the lines are pretty good, not really far off there. So now I'm kind of looking at the steering input and the pedal work. You know, what does that look like? Is he trail braking well, or is he just jumping off the brakes? Is he stamping on the throttle, or is he nice and smooth? So you can see here, the trail braking is pretty nice. I think that was a little mistake there. I was watching the pedal, so I wasn't watching the line. Really nice trail braking and throttle input as well. Great. And there we have it, a complete lap. So let me just bring back up the chat. So first things first, it looks laggy. Someone's mentioned in the chat it looks laggy. That's if you're watching through Zoom, it will look laggy. The frame rate's really bad, which is why I put the YouTube link on there. I think that the YouTube video was fine. So first things first, lines look pretty good. There were a few little tweaks here and there, but they weren't kind of. It was more about the platform of the car, not the fact that he's not using enough road or missing the apexes. Weren't really any mistakes in there, apart from when I think I took my eyes off off where the car was going. I was looking at the pedal work through Druids, which is the fast double right-hander towards the end of the lap. I think he might have missed an apex at the beginning, but we'll see on the second run through there. And other than that, I mean, it was a nice tidy lap, which is great because he's got the platform of the car working in a fluid way that I mentioned, which gives him a really good kind of platform to then just try and improve and tweak a few little bits. But he's kind of most of the way there. We just need to have a few little tweaks there. I don't know if any of you guys have got any feedback for Amrik in the chat. So if you do have anything that you noticed there, apart from the understeer into Druids, not much there really. Yeah, that's fantastic. So Amrik, if you want to unmute yourself, let's have a quick chat before we go into the details.
Hi, Scott. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It seemed a good idea when I sent the video in, and when you announced my name, I was thinking, shit, what's he doing?
Well, if you look at the chat, there's not many people pointing anything wrong out. So first of all, thanks very much for sending it in. I know having all the people from the course watching your lap is a difficult thing, but it was a great lap. Great.
Yeah, but it's good feedback because we race in the PCGB Sim Racing League. I think you sponsored last year or last season. So there's a few other guys on the course from here as well. So it's anyway, it's really good. But so that's why I sent it in, because this is our last race on Wednesday.
Oh, well, good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, so how did you think the lap went yourself? I presume this was your quickest lap of the session or the testing that you did.
Yeah, I mean, it was okay, and it is my best lap. And obviously, they've changed the settings on the car now, so it's a bit weird when I drove it last time. But I tend to find that I do when my lap times get worse when I overdrive the car when I'm going crazy. So the point you made about being fluid, keeping it gentle, inputs, less, not so harsh, you tend to get better lap times. But it's easier to say that than actually do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, there's only a few little bits that I would work on, and they are details. When I see a lap like this where there aren't any glaring issues with it, we're looking at the details. We're looking at the edges of how you're turning the car into the corner. We're looking at thinking about the platform. Are we extracting the most grip from the platform of the car? And there were a few little things that I would suggest to go and try. And look, bearing in mind that was the first time I've watched it, so I'm going to go through it in detail now. But when you kind of at a good level like yourself, it's a case of testing it. If I'll suggest some things, and they may or may not be right, but you've got to go and try them, and you might find it a bit of time.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. So, coming up to turn 1 here, all looks pretty good. Your braking's good. You're kind of doing most of it in a straight line. You've got a little bit of steering angle in here. So I just, it's not much at all. But just try to, it's weird here, right? Because the circuit turns to the left a little bit, kind of opens itself up as you come in. But maybe position the car earlier so that you are in a perfectly straight line here, but that is a detail. You're not going to find much time there. Bringing it into the apex. So what I'm doing here for the sake of everybody is I'm looking at how Amric's turning into the apex, looking at the trail braking and how all of that blends together. So you can see if you watch the brake trace, got a really nice shape to it, a really nice profile. He's keeping hold of the nose quite a long way here. And Amric, can you remember at this point, did you ever struggle with oversteer on the entry?
Not so much, to be fair. If I get it wrong here and I miss the apex, I actually understeer off the track.
Yeah, so that was going to be one of my only things. I maybe try and just carry the brakes in with a little bit more pressure here. You might then be able to brake a bit later, trail in a bit deeper and with a bit more pressure, and it might grab the nose a little bit, but I don't know, right? Because it might oversteer then and actually get you in trouble there. But you hooked up on the apex perfectly. At this point, if you watch the steering wheel, everyone, I think that might be a bit of understeer. Can you see, and you might have to confirm this, I might be wrong, but this extra bit of lock here means that something isn't quite right. And if you look at the trajectory of the car coming out, you've actually snapped it to a bit of oversteer there. I think you've got a tiny little bit of mid-corner understeer there, Amric. So there might be a little bit of time in actually, it's either trading the brakes in a fraction more or turning in a fraction later, so that at this point in the corner, the car is turned by a few more degrees and you can then get the car out the corner a little bit quicker.
Right, okay.
Okay, but it's details. I just feel like you're hanging on to the steering angle for quite a long time as you're coming out, and then finally it kind of snaps around and it's kind of the car's a bit more neutral. It's like
Yeah,
this.
I suppose the reason I'm probably doing that, because I've gone wide quite a lot of times on that corner.
On the exit.
I'm probably on the exit. I'm probably subconsciously trying to make sure I don't do that by maybe there's some subconscious thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, typically. But if you're running wide on the exit, it means that at the mid corner, you want the car to be doing a little bit more turning.
Okay.
You want the car to be, at this point, turned a little bit more so that it doesn't just understeer and you run off the track, right? And if you're in a kind of race stint and a race situation, if you give up a little bit more on the entry, so turn in a fraction later, which means you probably, you might have to go in a little bit slower, get the car turned a bit more, but then you protect yourself on the exit because you're not kind of hoping that the front end is going to hang on and potentially running wide and getting an off track.
Okay.
Yeah. So like it's also in a race stint, you've got to think about how you can protect yourself a little bit more. So we'll play it forwards. Coming down the hill here, fantastic part of the track. You just go back a little bit. So I'd say all of this is pretty good. For me here, and it's only again, it's a fraction. In the real world and in the sim, the road is cambered a lot at Alton Park. So you can, if I just wind it back here, if you can see my mouse, which I think you can, there's a seam down the middle of the track here, and it's cambered, off camber on the outside and cambered on the inside. So the line into Cascades can sometimes feel a little bit unusual, like you're turning in a bit early because we want to get it into this inside half of the track a little bit earlier than we would do if it was a perfectly flat piece of track. So again, like here, so what at the moment you're kind of sat up on top of the crest of the road, and it can sometimes understeer or make the car slide prematurely, but you might want to try and get down there a fraction earlier. So we're only talking half a car's width on the inside of you. And again, as I kind of the caveat that I gave at the start, it might not work, but it is something to try, and you might find a tenth or two. But then the line's good here. You can actually see it in the car. Like I feel like the car's sliding here, and then as you come into the compression here, can you the car's going to turn? It turns there. Can you see it turn? It turns a bit more. So that's all the kind of the car loading up and turning. If you can get down there just a little bit earlier, and kind of it almost feels like you're driving diagonally across the corner entry. The camber will probably help you. Throttle trace is great on the way out, using all the road, that's all perfect. And what I just mentioned about the camber at Cascades, the previous corner, coming into the next left, it's exactly the same there. You'll probably feel it that if you don't quite turn in at the right point, the thing just understeers.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done that and been off the track a few times.
Yeah, you fall off the edge of the track.
Yeah, you can't.
So again, it's actually a case of perhaps, I'm not sure if you're using all the road on the outside here, it could be a little tweak, but you can see the seam. Can you see the seam here? So it's definitely in the software. And I've driven iRacing Alton Park quite a lot, so I know that it's there. To be fair here, you do get across quite early and on the inside of it. But what you will notice is if you push it too much and come much further than, I mean, you've done it perfectly there. You've kind of positioned the outside of the corner, if you want to call it that, just before where the seam is. It's like if you drop a wheel on the other side of the seam, then you lose a fair amount of grip and you potentially run onto the grass and go off. So that's great. So coming into the shell hairpin, one thing that I would try here, Amri, and it isn't, it might not necessarily be quicker, but it's worth trying, is again because of the camber here, from this point, try to straight line and dive down to the apex quite early.
Yeah, I do try to hook the inside curve. This one, I missed it. So
Okay, so there's a mistake. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
this isn't the normal line that I would take. I would try and hook the inside because I know it's quite heavily cambered. I just came in a bit hot and
Okay.
I just missed it.
Okay. And normally when you do that, is it a fraction quicker?
Yeah, you can feel the grip a hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like being on a wall of death almost. You can feel that kind of.
Yes.
grip
And
on
so, I mean, sometimes if you jink the car across in the braking zone here and come to the inside, you also win because you're doing fewer meters. You know, here you kind of, this would be a kind of racing school line. I know you've gone in deep, but that would be typically a racing school line where you go in quite wide on a hairpin and then cut it back. But imagine we kind of drive across here. You're reducing the lap length by a few meters, which also obviously helps a little bit.
Sorry to interrupt, Scott, but I don't understand why can you do this? Because that's a hairpin, so I would expect the line that Amrit is taking here to be correct, because well, I would expect this to be a late apex corner. So why can you take the earlier apex here?
For a number of reasons. First of all, you chop off some lap length, so obviously you just gain some time there. You've got the camber, so you want to get it into the camber there. And with a hairpin, because the corner itself is so long, 180 degrees here, you have to stay on the outside for so long before you cut back. On a kind of on a 120 degree corner, you can run wide and then still get in, but you kind of get trapped. It's like Druids at Brands Hatch. You kind of get trapped on the apex anyway, and so you're not kind of swinging out right, keeping the speed up, and you're able to get on the throttle earlier. The final thing is that the straight after this hairpin isn't particularly long, and so you're probably better off shaving some lap length off on the entry, taking a little bit of a hit on the exit, but not much. But overall, you'll win a little bit more if you get it into the entry a bit quicker. Of course, if there was a 1 kilometer straight after this, it might be that you actually want to run the car a bit wider. But in a hairpin, a lot of the time you can have the space to actually imagine Luffield at Silverstone. You have the space to make it almost 2 apexes where you have you V the corner off a little bit more rather than taking that traditional kind of whiteboard racing line.
Scott, can I just add something?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing about practicing taking the inside corner, obviously, because we're in this racing league. So if you're coming into here, to me, to practice taking the inside line, if you're somebody's trying to overtake you, it's going to be difficult for them to overtake you on that outside line.
Absolutely.
So that's why to me, practicing taking the inside line, that's why I would generally take that line anyway.
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Great point. And that's kind of reminded me of another point, is that if you bring the car down to the inside diagonally, quite, as we've just described, if you miss your braking point by a few meters, you're not going to fall off the edge of the track. Whereas if you're, taking this line that Amrik's taking, the kind of traditional line, even though it was a mistake on this case, and you miss your braking point by a few meters, you can easily drop a wheel on the grass and in the gravel. So in a race,
I've done as well.
Yeah, exactly. So in a race stint, you're protecting yourself from making, even though it might be a little mistake, it would cost you so much time or even cause damage. You're just protecting yourself from that. So for a variety of reasons there, that's why we would prefer probably to take this line. But it's something that you have to experiment with. It depends on the car, depends on the type of hairpin, and this is where you need to try back to back both types of line, and look at the delta. Basically, I mean that's what I'm doing all the time, is just checking, confirming things on the delta. So looking at the throttle, little bit of mid corner understeer there, I think. But the exit's good. So this is a really technical part of the track, really tricky, really easy to make a mistake. And this is actually the first area that I really saw where I think you could make some time up. With a tight...
I always lose time on here when I do my deltas and that. I either, it's very easy to lose 2, 3, 4, half a second there.
Yes. Okay, well, here we go. This is where you'll find the time then. So with a twisty, bit of a Mickey Mouse chicane like we have here, we need to open it up as much as we can because it makes a massive difference to how much speed you can carry in. And if you look at this line, like the right thing to do through here is to be braking. You're basically using this first left as a braking zone for the right? So we're braking through all this area. But if you look at what Amrik's doing, there's too much turning happening while we're braking. So it's braking here. We're in a bit of a straight line for a while, but then we've got some steering angle in and then some steering angle in here. And so the deceleration is taking us longer than it would be if the car was in a straight line. And it all starts from back here. You need to turn in a fraction later, Amri, even if that requires a bit of a lift. I'm not sure that it will do, but even if it does, because you're getting too close into the corner and you're requiring too much turning to happen when you're coming into this braking zone. We want to be turned at this point a fraction more, so we've got the car a little bit further to the white line. So at this point, if you can see my mouse, we're turned to the left a lot more, and then the braking zone through the first left, the car's platform will be a lot flatter rather than having to turn like you are here. So try to think of this section of track as being one corner, the right, and the left part is just part of the braking zone. And in that part, we want to keep the platform of the car as flat as we can in terms of roll, so that we're decelerating as quickly as we can. And that's where you'll find the time and an improvement in consistency, because you're making the job a bit easier for yourself. I mean, the amount of curb you're using is perfect, but it's just the fact that you've got so much steering angle in here that you'll struggle to slow the car down properly. And that's probably why you're losing time through there.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense?
Yeah.
And then exit's really good. Could potentially use a bit more road on the outside. So again, and I don't know about the Porsche because I've not driven a Porsche around here, but for me, the exit point of this corner is right up against this white line. If you can get it, if you can get it up against that white line, it means you're opening the previous section up a lot more than you are with this example. And then here, when the car's flat, just let it settle for a second, accelerate, and then do the kind of turning a little bit late. I don't know how close in the Porsche, I don't know how close this left-hander, is the car close to the limit, or is there excess grip available there?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't know.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I said, to be honest with you, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, okay. So what I would suggest is just using a little bit more road on the left here. Yeah, and then I don't think in most cars this left-hander isn't really a corner, because it's just, it's too easy because we're going so slowly. We're only doing 60 miles an hour here. So use the white line as the exit curb essentially here. Use a little bit more road there. That means that then, combined with the braking in more of a straight line on the entry, plus, so you've opened the corner up a lot more on the entry, you opened it up a lot more on the exit, and because it's really narrow, you'll gain loads and loads of time. Like, it's quite easy to gain a big chunk of time through this chicane because it is so fiddly.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So coming down, and then also you'll win time down here because you just keep the momentum going in the car, and then that translates to more time on the delta down here. Another tricky chicane here, really easy to hit that tire stack. Trail braking's good. In control of the car. Again here, and this is something that is a suggestion rather than a kind of black and white. You might want to, all of this section is a compromise. It's a compromise through the right. How much road do we use on the left? It's a compromise through the next left. and then it's a compromise through the final right. What I would say is that the kind of final right is probably the most important part of this section. And so if you rewind and reverse engineer everything back to this point where we are now, you need to be turning into the final right on the optimum line through that part of the corner. So that you carry the speed then up the hill through the next, in quotes, straight, even though it's not straight, but the next flat out section. So this section then affects the next left. And this is something that you've got to play with. Check your data, check your delta. So I'd say at this point, you're probably in the right area. Bringing it in nicely. And yeah, you've nailed the last part of the last part of the corner there. Last part of the sequence. Off the brakes, off the throttle, sorry, picking it back up. I mean, where you're doing, I'm looking at the throttle trace here. The moment when you're picking up the throttle, how you're getting on the throttle is all perfect. So that's great. You can see a little bit of rotation coming in, and then we're flat. Flat up the hill, so it's important that you get a good exit from there because it's uphill. And then, so this is another, you know, at the beginning I said it was about the edges of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's so close to being bang on, Amri, but it's just, I think what you need to do is try and give a little bit more space between letting the car settle in roll, so getting the steering angle out of it, and then getting on the brakes. Just try and open that space up a little bit. So because I've seen it a couple of times, and you know that we're always talking about patterns. So it's these corners where you're doing a bit of turning that then leads into a braking zone.
Yeah.
I want to turn into this section a little bit later, right? So that when you get to this point, the car's turned a little bit more and is sitting flatter when you then get on the brakes.
Okay.
It's just a tiny, like that lift into the, it's just a little bit, it's a tiny amount, but it will make you more consistent and hopefully find you a little bit of speed. And then this is the bit that I missed when I watched it the first time round. Yeah, you're just a little bit wide there, I'd say.
Yeah.
But that's probably because you just went in a bit hot, right? And you're back on the throttle. Hopefully the car's accepting it and you're coming out pretty well. Just try and get the car. Yeah, that's bang on. A little bit of oversteer there on the exit's fine. You'll find with that crest on the exit that you might want to, you need to give the car less work to do than you would do just at the apex of that corner, because you get the crest and all the weight moves and you can get some kind of quite snappy oversteer. But you did that perfectly. Coming down to the last part of the track. So again here, your trajectory is a little bit off, right? When you get on the brakes, you're having to do a bit of turning. So you're in a straight line here on the brakes, which is great. But then you realize that you're not using all the road on the left. And I can see the car turning just a little bit.
Yeah.
So first of all, you're giving up a little bit of space on the entry. So you're making the corner essentially a bit tighter. But also you're having to turn in the braking zone, which means that if you're using some of the grip for turning, you're not fully slowing the car down as quickly as you can. And so it comes back to this kind of all the way back here, where actually you probably want to give yourself a little bit more space against the white line. So move the car just to the right a little bit, but have it turned a little bit more left, so that your vision wants to be down here, down here at the turning point. And if you do that, then you'll just drive straight there and you won't be giving up any grip for turning when you should just be using it for braking.
Actually, that's a good point, because when I'm coming over that point, I'm actually looking at the apex on the right. I'm not looking on the left. So that's probably why my car is aiming further right, I would have thought.
Yes.
I'm looking at the wrong bit.
Perfect. So look at the apex, by all means. Have a look at this entry and then get back to the apex once you know that you're kind of heading in the right direction. This is a big enough braking zone that you've got time to do multiple things there. So, you know, it's great having your vision all the way down here, but if you're not understanding where you need to be at this point, we need to give yourself some more visual input, some more information by moving your vision across.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would suggest to you, let's just finish off the lap. Line to bang on. Throttle application is great. A little bit of rotation on the exit, and there we go. Yeah. So I would say to you, you know, if you were heading into another session, go out there and just make sure your vision's right in all of those areas, because that's a really fundamental thing before we get into the details. And then those few points that I've mentioned to you, the next thing that I would work on is in some of those, just think about how the platform of the car is working when you get on the brakes. Okay, in those very technical sections of the track, going into the chicane, where, you know, we're basically making the best of a difficult situation. The car will never be completely flat, I don't think, through there, but we need to get it as close as we can. So think about your entry. So remember when we were approaching the first chicane, turn into the right a fraction later, so that the car's turned a bit more. So then you can get it kind of turned and flat for making that braking as straight as you can going into the chicane. Use a bit more road on the exit. And then when you're coming up to Druids, again, same thing, turn in a little bit later to the quick left, get the car flat, let it rest, and then get on the brakes. Okay, give it a little bit more space between the turning and then the braking. And then the same as you come back into the last part of the lap, into the final right, just make sure that you've got the trajectory of the car right. But guys, for everybody there, that was a detailed type session. Fundamentally, everything's great with Amri. The braking trace is great. 99% of the vision is perfect. The throttle trace is great. It's all happening at the right times in the corner. He's not braking too early. He's not getting on the throttle too early. And so that's why we didn't go into anything massively fundamental, because he's got that foundation sorted. And this is what that kind of next depth level that we've been talking about, where we're going through and we're just trying to find a little bits here. But you can see it relates to the fundamentals, right? The car will slow down quickest in a straight line. So let's try and just move what we're asking for from the car so that we can, in these technical corners, get the thing in a straight line and decelerate as quickly as we can, and just open up the circuit a little bit more. Do you have anything to add to that, Amrik? Any questions or?
No, just when will you post the video? Because I'm not going to remember all that.
I'll put it up now,
right.
and then Mike will send it out. I think I actually don't know when he sends them out, but I'm sure he'll send it out today. But he's in Canada, so it won't be until 3 or 4 this afternoon.
No, that's fine, because I'm actually going to do some practice this afternoon, and so we've got the race on Wednesday, so it'd be good to try and
okay. So yeah, so
some of those points.
First session, get up to speed, get to where you are. You know, don't worry about too much. Second session, think about the vision, especially as you're coming to the end of the lap, and you might find that some other bits kind of peek out to you, like turn 1, for example. Turn 1, you kind of got enough time to come back and forth with your vision. Next session, have a think about the cambers that we spoke about, maybe getting it into the camber a little bit earlier in cascades, trying to remove that error that you had going into the hairpin and diving down to the apex quite early there. See if that works for you. Third session, think about the edges in terms of the roll of the car going into those technical braking sections, and see how that affects you. Even if you don't find much time or any time, it will likely make the car easier to drive, which then means you'll be more consistent, which will then help you over a race distance.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I appreciate the time looking at the lap.
No, thank you very much for sending it in. Okay, guys, I'm going to do a quick Q&A because that has absolutely flown by. You can see that I'm very passionate and love going over these things. So I did want to get over 2 laps, but we will not have the time. I know some of you have got to go to other sessions as well, so I want to be careful with your time. So if you do need to head off, by all means, we've done the majority of what we're going to go over. I will answer a couple of questions, 3 or 4 questions now, if you do have any, and do my best to answer them. When you are asking questions, please note that I will always talk about the fundamentals, how you can improve your technique. In all honesty, detailed questions about FOV or setting a steering wheel up are best put towards our coaches, because they are much more involved with all of those things than me. So if you are heading off, thank you very much. Really appreciate you trusting us and joining our course. I love that you've joined. Hope it's been really great for you guys. Other than that, let's head into some questions for 10 minutes or so. So Anthony Clark in the chat, if you just want to turn your mic on, Anthony, and explain what the question is.
Hi, yeah, so actually there was a little private message thing going on as well about this.
Oh, right, okay.
So one of the things that was trying to get right in Laguna Seca was one particular corner, and in doing that, it was very clear that my overlap between brake and throttle was part of the problem. And are there any specific things you can do to try and prevent that problem? Because as I said, coming off the throttle and going on the brake, whenever it was the overlap made it difficult to make the corner properly. When I didn't overlap them, then I basically was doing everything at the wrong time. Yeah. So are there any specific techniques or things that we can try out to try and get rid of some of that? I know you have to do it sometimes, but I mean in general, it's obviously a built-in problem for me, so I'll just try and get rid of it.
It's a habitual, repetitive thing. And as with all of those things, you need to make it as simple as you can and do it 100 times, and then you should be okay. So, I mean, I would sit there in the game and just do it. Just do it and watch the trace.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I think it puts the auto brake on when you come to a stop, but you might just want to pick a circuit that's got a really long straight, accelerate up, get on the brakes, and just don't worry about looking on the track. Look at the trace.
Yes.
Look at your throttle position and just repeat that. And just make sure that you just need to give yourself a bit more space. So first of all, you need to make these things conscious and consciously think about it and look at the visual graphic that we have there. Do that enough times, and then you shouldn't have to worry about it, I don't think.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And just to say that it has actually really helped. I celebrated finishing on a lead lap in an endurance race for the first time. I must admit that the people I drive with are substantially better than me and have been doing for longer. There's a few aliens in this league. But to do that was just a major thing, because I knew what the competition around was like. So that's been good.
Fantastic, mate. Well done. That's great feedback, and they're substantially quicker than you at the moment, but carry on and practice, and it all comes together. You know, it's the chunks at the beginning.
We also did the Motorsport UK thing on Wednesday, watching you, and I used some of your, shall we say, gentlemanly bullying techniques that you described in that. That was very useful.
Yeah, I can say this now because this is our thing. But so for those of you who don't know, I did a seminar for the Motorsport UK Association, which is our governing body, and it was on racecraft, and I had to be a little bit careful with how aggressive I explained things. Yeah, but basically, I mean, that's.
We all read between the lines. We all knew.
I was very aware that the guys from MS UK were there, so I was being careful. But yeah, basically, you can be relatively aggressive.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Okay, Chris, I can see you've got a question in the chat. If you want to just turn your mic on so you can explain it, because it's a long question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can, Chris, yes.
Hi, Scott. Yeah, it's a quick one. First of all, thanks very much. I think the course has been excellent. I've got a couple of questions on GT3, trying to separate fact from fiction. Trail braking the GT3 into the corner. I'd normally trail brake all the way to the apex, but there's been some videos by the designers of the program suggesting because of the aero on a GT3, you only trail brake so far and then let the aero take it through the apex. Is that true? Is that a simism? And the same goes for understeer on exit. I tend to have a lot of understeer on the front engine cars. They're suggesting a negative blip, I'd call it, on the exit. So you're full on the throttle, you basically blip off, blip on to try and generate a bit of rotation. That just seems to me crazy dangerous for losing the car. Is that a simism or is that a real technique?
I don't know if it's a simism or if they're just talking a load of rubbish. I wouldn't expect that to be to be right. That sounds very, very unusual. You know, I spent the best part of my career in single seaters, which have more aero than a GT car, and you trail brake more in a single seater in the real world than you do in a Mazda, because you know they support the extra grip, they're stiffer, so you can trail brake deeper into the corner. What I would say to you in terms of figuring it out is try it if you've got some time. But in terms of where you trail brake to, it isn't a case of saying, oh, I'm doing it to this point and then I'm coming off, or I'm continuing to this other point. It's a case of you driving the car on the limit, understanding, as we've gone through in the course, understanding which end of the car needs more or less grip and then adapting to it. It's going to be different between cars, it's going to be different between circuits, it's going to be different between corners. And so if you found that, oh, I come off the brakes and it understeers, well, just try and keep them on a little bit longer without locking a tire. It's all relative. It all needs to come from you. If you're going to watch suggestions from other people, I would say watch with caution. And if it sounds interesting and you've spiked my interest now, I might try this the next time, but I can't imagine it's right. It isn't. Then try it, but with a very open mind. But always come back to your driving, what you're doing at a specific moment, and how the car's reacting there, and adapt to that. Because everything else is just kind of up here. You know, it isn't deep enough.
No, that's good, Scott. That's really reasonable. Thanks very much for that. Great.
Andreas, we'll have a question from you if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, Scott. So basically, I just wanted to double check that whatever we learned would be applicable to the real world, so going on the track with a real car, or is there something we should be aware that, you know, this is more on the sim racing world and not on the real car world?
Yeah,
I understand. My feeling is that everything is applicable, but I just wanted to double check if that's
everything is actually, it comes from my real world training. And so it's the reason that we brought it from the real world into sim. And what I would say that there are, iRacing is pretty good actually, but in some of the other platforms, there are some tricks that we actually don't talk about, because still the fundamentals need to be right. And the reason that we've based it very much on real world training is that over the next however many years, sim racing is only going to become more and more realistic. And so even if there are a few tricks at the moment, not really in iRacing, but in some of the other platforms, they will get squashed over the years, and it will just become more of the fundamentals that we're teaching here. But yeah, I train drivers on sims that then go into the real world, and it's the same. You know, of course, there are a few things that you need to watch out for in terms of like mental training. Like, you know, if you go out and you go out too quickly when you're trying to learn a track or a car, and you go off and you just reset, like that type of thing you want to try. If you are planning to go in the real world, you probably want to tone things down a little bit, and do that in your sim training as well. Whenever I get in the sim, because I'm using it primarily to train for the real world and to just prepare myself, I treat it like I would do going out in the real world in, you know, a 488 Ferrari or whatever it is. And so if I go off on the first lap, well, not if I go. I don't do that. What I'm trying to say is I don't drive knowing that I can just reset and start again. I treat everything in the same way. I prepare myself in the same way. I focus in the same way. My outlap is the same. I try and warm the tires with a certain process. I then find the limit with a certain process, as you've seen in the course, and then I manipulate from there. I take risks, more risks in corners that have runoff and that are slow. I take fewer risks in corners on Alton Park, as you've just seen in the lap that we've analysed. That's the main thing that you have to be careful of if you are using the sim to train in the real world. Make sure the mental process is the same.
Great, thanks a lot. I'm pleasantly surprised with iRacing and the realism that is in there. So that's really good. And yeah, I've seen some laps from other people that were, smashing the throttle, very early and getting a bit wide, but, making some time there. But, you can't do that in the real world because it's too risky, as you said. So you need to.
Yeah, I think iRacing is very good, especially with the right car. We trained Tony Kanaan, the IndyCar driver, earlier this year when they were doing all the esports championships, and that car, the IndyCar, the old IndyCar, I think it's the old IndyCar, is really, it's very difficult to drive, and it doesn't relate as closely as something like the Mazda or the Skip Barber, which the physics are really great. So I don't, I think that there's a kind of development process that kind of trickles down, and I think the Mazdas and the Skips are toward the top of that. So yeah, I mean, it's great. Love it. Okay, guys, I've run over by a good 10 or 15 minutes, so I'm going to call it a day there. Just wanted to finish by saying thank you so much for joining us, being part of the course and committing to the Driver 61 training programs. I really hope you've taken a lot from it, and you've moved your driving on a good step. Bear in mind that, the learning doesn't stop here. You need to be conscious with your driving. Continue to think about these principles. If something falls away, don't be worried about stepping back and actually thinking how we've learned over the past 4 weeks, and continuing to apply that. Don't just forget about the course and crack on. Try to think about these principles and working on them. Other than that, if you do want to do any more training, we've got the SRA Academy, which you basically buy credits each month and you can spend them on different group sessions, so 1-to-1 or 5-to-1. We have some really cool racecraft sessions where we team you up with another driver and you have 2 defending and 2 attacking. That's a really cool session. Got all different sessions like this. So if you do want to continue learning with us, then do that. And by all means, continue to use the course and work through that yourself. Make your notes and really get in deep with your racing. I just saw in the chat, is there any way you can provide feedback? I do believe that Mike will send you a feedback form anyway. It's a way that we just keep track of how we can improve and what the coaching is like and all of that stuff. So I do believe you'll have that. If not, just email Mike at mike.winter@driver61.com and he'll be happy to receive any feedback, good or bad, because we're always trying to improve our programs as well. Okay, guys, that said, thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Christmas. Merry Christmas to everybody. And hopefully I'll see you around at some other point on the seminar. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye. Happy holidays.
Yeah.